Did Gil leave or did they kick Gil out?
You can't kick Gil out and we stay. That don't make no sense.
So Gil left.
Gil.
Yes or no? Don't.
I'm trying to figure out why he was doing it. We don't need Skip, bro.
Right.
We killing.
Funny enough, the biggest entertainment from the Gilbert Arenas situation wasn't even the news itself. It was Nick Young roasting everything on Instagram. A couple of weeks back, I covered what was happening with Gilbert Arenas, and by then, it felt like the internet had already reached its verdict. People were acting like Gil's arena was finished, blaming some of Gil's friends for making terrible business moves. Then, Underdog let everyone go, and watching the aftermath unfold became comedy for a lot of people. Without Nick Young constantly dropping jokes online, that entire story probably wouldn't have stayed alive the way it did.
You still hiring, right? 'Cause ain't no jobs opportunity over here, they said, man, everybody gone.
For days, people kept acting like the outcome was already decided even though there was never an official announcement saying any of it was over. That's why I said we should wait until someone actually spoke on it. And once that finally happened, the reality turned out to be much bigger than anyone expected. Underdog didn't just move on from Gil's arena. They shut down every show in their lineup on the very same day. That's a massive move from a company that had invested so heavily in those productions. It would be like ESPN suddenly announcing that NFL Live, The Pat McAfee Show, SportsCenter, and First Take were all canceled at once. But once you understand the reason behind it, the entire conversation changes. This was never really about Gilbert Arenas. It wasn't about Skip Bayless, and it definitely wasn't just another media feud. The bigger story is what's happening across sports media right now, and hardly anyone seems to be paying attention to it. By the time this is over, you'll probably look at the sports podcasts you watch a little differently. Gilbert Arenas turned Gil's Arena into the biggest basketball show on YouTube, pulling in around 500 million views while becoming the 5th largest daily sports show in America. Each episode averaged roughly 275,000 viewers before he separated from Underdog. He left with ownership of Gil's Arena name, while the internet spent the following week insisting everyone had been fired. I also need to correct something I said before, because the truth actually reflects even better on Gil. I previously said he sold half of the show in 2025, but that wasn't accurate. The partnership with Underdog had been a 50-50 arrangement from the very beginning. When Underdog launched Gil's Arena in February 2023 as part of its content network, it also built the studio in his basement, including the Jumbotron at the center of the floor. There was never an independent show that Gil later sold off. According to Gil himself, he gave up half of the business at the start in exchange for resources and infrastructure he couldn't have created on his own.
You know, I did 50-50 ownerships to get the foundation because I had no idea what it took to run shows. So now I understand how to run shows. So I don't need to do 50-50s no more.
Gilbert Arenas made that partnership early on because he openly admitted he didn't know how to operate a show by himself. If you want the complete background, I covered all of that in the previous video and I'll leave it linked on the end screen, but this is enough context to keep going. Then, on July 6th, Brandon Contes from Awful Announcing reported that Underdog was leaving the original content business altogether to concentrate on its prediction market and fantasy gaming app. This wasn't a simple restructuring or a move to cut a few personalities because they decided to exit that business entirely. Gil's Arena, the Arena Gridiron, and the fantasy football show featuring Josh Norris and Hayden Winks were all shut down immediately. Every remaining show under the company was canceled that same afternoon. Underdog also released a statement, and one part of it really stands out. They said their casts and production teams built a highly successful content network that grew through authenticity and a strong connection with fans. The company added that the best way to continue its mission was by focusing all of its resources on its core products. That doesn't sound like a company claiming the shows failed. They're actually acknowledging the network succeeded, expanded, and connected with viewers before deciding to end it anyway. So this doesn't look like Underdog targeting Gilbert Arenas. It looks like a company walking away from the entire content business. What's interesting is that a lot of people online have been pushing the idea that Underdog got petty, made a mistake, brought in Skip Bayless to force Gilbert Arenas out, and watched the plan backfire. I even bought into part of that narrative myself, and it turns out I was wrong. Then the story takes another turn because Rashad McCants, who had plenty of positive things to say about Underdog, enters the conversation.
A shout out to Underdog. What I'm so proud to be wearing, giving us the opportunity to be able to show and prove as a sports show on the internet, YouTube, everywhere else.
The conversation took another turn when Rashad McCants appeared on Lou Williams' podcast. Lou didn't dance around the topic and asked him directly whether Gilbert Arenas had been forced out or if leaving was completely Gil's own decision.
Okay. So who left?
Mike
did Gil leave or did they kick Gil out?
You can't kick Gil out and we stay. That don't make no sense.
So Gil left.
According to Rashad McCants, Gilbert Arenas chose to leave on his own. That's someone from the show saying it publicly. The discussion about Skip Bayless also came up during that same podcast. McCants went on to explain what Underdog's role actually was behind the show, and his version doesn't match the story that's been spreading across the internet.
They came in and helped us build the shit, pay for the whole production, the whole, all that shit.
Yeah, in his basement,
It's a sponsor.
Yeah.
Like, it ain't no, he brought Skip in.
I also need to correct something else from my previous video, because I got part of that story wrong. I originally suggested Underdog brought Skip Bayless in to edge Gilbert Arenas out, but that's not what actually happened. Rashad McCants said Gilbert was the one who invited Skip, and Gil had already said the same thing back in May. So when Skip filled Gil's chair during that May 20 conference finals episode, both that appearance and Gil's reaction were genuine. What doesn't hold up is the idea that Underdog secretly planted Skip as Gilbert's replacement. That's the version the internet ran with, and I ended up repeating it too, so I owe you that correction. If you think this story is only about one basketball podcast disappearing, you're missing the bigger picture. Gil's Arena wasn't just another show, it was the centerpiece of Underdog's entire content network. Rasheed Wallace had a show there, Steve Smith Sr. had one too. Bill Belichick, the 6-time Super Bowl winning coach, hosted a fantasy football show with Underdog. The company even hired James Palmer away from NFL Network as its insider. They partnered with Snapback Sports and also licensed It Is What It Is, featuring Cameron and Mace. When you look at names like Cameron, Bill Belichick, and Rasheed Wallace under one umbrella, that's much bigger than a podcast lineup. It was the kind of media operation that could compete with companies like ESPN. Now, every one of those shows is gone. Not a single program was left standing. So why would a company build a network it publicly described as highly successful and then shut the whole thing down? The answer starts with what Underdog actually is. It's a gambling company that launched in 2020, grew rapidly during the sports betting boom, and poured major money into content for one purpose. The goal wasn't simply to make basketball shows, it was to drive people toward its betting products. You don't even have to take my word for it, because the company said as much in its own announcement when it signed Gil's Arena cast. Underdog's chief marketing officer described Gil's Arena as the proof of concept for the network. That same release explained Gilbert had become a fixture across Underdog's products, with his picks, and eventually those of his co-hosts, featured inside the company's website and app. In other words, the shows were designed to bring viewers into the platform. You'd watch Kenyon Martin go off for a couple of hours, then hopefully end up downloading the app and placing a small parlay. That was the business model. The couch doubled as the marketing budget, and that strategy is now breaking down across the industry. This isn't just speculation, because the same pattern keeps showing up. DraftKings once had its own network and aired a daily Gojo show before ending its in-house content efforts in 2025. FanDuel also built a television network, then announced in March a 20-month wind-down that would eliminate around 100 jobs. FanDuel's CEO openly said the network no longer matched the company's long-term plans. ESPN also walked away from its 10-year, $1.5 billion ESPN Bet agreement with Penn after only 2 years. DraftKings, FanDuel, ESPN Bet, and now Underdog have all made similar exits within roughly an 18-month span. Reports point to the same reason across the industry. Sports betting operators have reduced the massive marketing spending that followed legalized betting in 2018. Outside of a small number of hosts who consistently turn viewers into paying customers, the return on content simply wasn't strong enough. Shows could generate millions of views without convincing many people to actually download the app or place bets. And what's making this even crazier is just how quickly everything changed. If you go back to October, the difference is unbelievable. Underdog released its own statement back then with its head of content saying this style of programming represented the future of modern sports media and that the company was pushing it even further.
Only 9 months later, that entire operation was gone. Before getting into how all of this unfolded, there's one claim about the football show that needs to be addressed. Every Click channel seems to be repeating the same story, that Skip Bayless's football show failed, dragged the channel down, and caused everything to collapse. It sounds believable, but that's not what happened. After the rebrand into Gridiron, the numbers didn't decline, they surged. The show jumped 93% in its first month and reached 23 million views in September. That made it the second most watched sports show on YouTube, trailing only Pat McAfee. The football show nearly doubled its audience, which makes the shutdown even harder to understand. It wasn't canceled because it stopped performing. It was canceled while it was still succeeding. Look at the September view totals for the biggest sports shows on YouTube. Pat McAfee led with 26.9 million views. The Arena followed with 23.2 million. First Things First had 23 million. Nightcap reached 22.6 million. Club Shay Shay finished with 15.1 million. Club 520 recorded 13.5 million. New Heights had 13.4 million. All the Smoke came in at 10.6 million. September is the biggest month of football season, and the second largest show on that list has already disappeared. Then, one decision made in a boardroom ends up affecting everyone connected to it. Take Skip Bayless as an example. Fox Sports 1 let him go in 2024 after Undisputed was canceled, following an 8-year run. He landed at Underdog and got his own football show. Less than 2 years after leaving Fox, he was without a show again. He was sitting in Gilbert Arenas' chair in May, and by July, the entire operation had been shut down. The way it all ended is still wild to think about. The final Arena free agency livestream featured only Skip Bayless, Brandon Jennings, and Rashad McCants. Those three were hosting a live show for a company that had already decided it was exiting the business. The impact wasn't limited to the people on camera either. One of the Arena's producers went live on his own YouTube channel to confirm the news and made it clear that not everyone from the staff would be continuing with Gilbert Arenas. That includes camera operators, editors, bookers, and countless behind-the-scenes employees whose names most viewers will never know and who can't simply launch another show the following month. Even Nick Young, an NBA champion, went on Instagram and publicly asked Gilbert Arenas for a job.
Gilbert, big dog, Gilbert, you hiring still? Hey man, all that shit I said about you getting fired, man, it's water under the bridge.
This is where everything ultimately ended up. What people aren't overlooking isn't just the business side of the story, it's the environment that disappeared with it.
Like when you come to the arena, bro, it's hostile. Yeah. So we start talking that shit, he's sitting over there like, what the fuck, can you go and punch him? Like, are they gonna...
And that's where the spotlight shifts to the person who might be the most interesting part of this entire story, Rashad McCants.
You know what I'm saying? Like I did 10 years. I call it always like a 10-year bid. I did 10 years in purgatory. Wasn't fucking with me and
right.
Pretty much assassin. This is like a reincarnation. I come back from the dead.
Right now, most of the attention is on Rashad McCants, but once you understand what this show actually meant to him, it's hard not to feel some sympathy for the guy. Meanwhile, the conversation is shifted to people calling Gilbert Arenas the mastermind who beat the company. In a way, he did, but it's more complicated than I made it sound before. What Gilbert walked away with was the name, the intellectual property, the format, and the studio. That's the kind of leverage most athletes never even think to negotiate. What he didn't leave with was the YouTube channel itself. That belongs to Underdog, now renamed The Arena, and it's where the 500 million views and subscriber base still exist. Underdog also said it may explore selling those distribution channels and feeds. Personally, I've said before that I don't like when companies try to do that because it rarely works. If someone bought my YouTube channel and started uploading their own content without me while changing everything viewers originally subscribed for, the audience wouldn't stick around. We've watched that happen more than once. YouTube doesn't work like traditional television. On a show like SportsCenter, you can replace an anchor and expect people to keep watching. On YouTube, if you change the core identity of a channel, viewers stop clicking. When the audience disappears, the algorithm stops recommending the videos and the channel starts fading away. I still don't understand why companies keep making that mistake. The example that immediately comes to mind is what the Daily Wire did with Brett Cooper, which I also mentioned in my last video. As for Gilbert Arenas, I think he'll be fine. If he launches a brand new YouTube channel and tells his audience where to find it, I don't believe it's automatically doomed. Maybe the first few episodes take some time to rebuild momentum, but I wouldn't even be surprised if that isn't much of an issue. Starting over still means rebuilding your audience one subscriber and one viewer at a time, and that's never easy. Even with that challenge, I think he'll come out all right. Here's the part that really stands out to me. Underdog's own press release credits Gilbert Arenas as someone who helped pioneer sports new media by starting his podcast back in 2018. That was before the podcast explosion, before gambling companies flooded the space with money, and before anyone really understood how valuable YouTube sports shows could become. He helped shape this entire space, then happened to leave just before the money started drying up. So I don't think Gilbert simply outsmarted Underdog. That's far too small of a way to describe it. He ended up staying one step ahead of the entire era. He accepted gambling money when those companies were aggressively investing in anyone with a recognizable name and a camera. They funded the studio, built the production, staffed the operation, and gave him 3 years to learn how everything worked. Then he walked away with his brand intact just as that wave of money was disappearing. No matter what happens with Season 5, that part of Gilbert Arenas' story already feels like a success. The bigger takeaway isn't really about Gil at all, it's about the rest of the industry. Look at shows like Pat McAfee, First Things First, Nightcap, Club Shay Shay, New Heights, All the Smoke, and Part of My Take. Pay attention to who's sponsoring them and whose logo is sitting on the desk. The Underdog just delivered a message that everyone in the sports media should notice. A show can become a massive hit, be loved by viewers, rank as the second biggest sports show on YouTube, and still get shut down. That's because the goal wasn't just getting you to watch. The real objective was getting you to place bets, and Underdog said exactly that in its own material. This entire wave wasn't built simply because people loved basketball. It was fueled by gambling companies spending heavily to capture your attention. Now that money is starting to disappear. DraftKings, FanDuel, ESPN, and Underdog have all pulled back one after another. Gil's errand just happened to be the biggest name still standing when that shift arrived. Let me know where you stand on all of this in the comments.